Welcome to my channel. Before we dive into today's story, please take a second to like and subscribe to our channel. We appreciate your support. Now let's get started. It's strange how a single moment can set your life on a new course. For me, it began with a meeting, one that I had planned, orchestrated even, yet never anticipated would unravel in such an extraordinary way. Michael was the kind of man who drew your attention the moment he entered a room. Sharp gray eyes, a disarming smile, and a confidence that only years of experience could hone. When I opened the door to greet him, I noticed a slight hesitation in his demeanor, a flicker of awe as he took in the estate. Most men would fawn over the grandeur, but Michael's focus never wavered. His gaze met mine, steady yet cautious, and I knew right then that he was different. "Welcome, Mr. Michael," I said, my voice calm, carrying just enough warmth to ease his nerves. I couldn't afford to let him see through me. Not yet. As he complimented my art collection and spoke of the property he'd come to present, I found myself intrigued. His words were deliberate, his manner effortless. I had expected professionalism, but Michael brought something more, an understated charm that made me want to lower my guard. But I didn't. Not then. When he showed me the apartment, I was prepared to be impressed. I'd seen breathtaking properties before, yet something about that space felt alive. It wasn't just the sweeping views or the exquisite design. It was the way Michael described it, as though he truly understood what it meant to want something extraordinary. "This apartment suits you perfectly," he said, his voice low. I turned to him, caught off guard by the sincerity in his tone. His gray eyes held mine, and for a moment, the world seemed quiet. Then I stepped closer, testing the waters, wondering if the connection I felt was mutual. It was. When his lips met mine, it was as though a dam had broken. I hadn't planned for it, hadn't expected it to. Find myself tangled in something so consuming, but with Michael, it felt inevitable. The next morning, I woke to find Michael watching me. There was a softness in his gaze, but also questions. I could sense his hesitation, his internal conflict. "Good morning, Mr. Michael," I teased, trying to lighten the mood, but inside, I was wrestling with my own thoughts. I hadn't intended to let things go this far. My life is complicated, to say the least. I knew that bringing Michael into my world would be risky, but I also knew that I couldn't keep him at a distance. When my phone buzzed, pulling me away from the moment, reality came crashing back. The voice on the other end reminded me of the stakes, of the fragile balance I was trying to maintain. By the time I returned to Michael, the lightness in the room had shifted. "Duty calls," I said, masking the unease I felt. "You'll be hearing from me soon." I kissed him, leaving him with more questions than answers. Later that day, I sent him a message. "Dinner tonight. There's something I'd like to discuss." When he arrived at the restaurant, I could see the curiosity and weariness in his expression. I wanted to ease his concerns, but I also knew there was no turning back. "Michael," I began, "how much do you know about that apartment?" He hesitated, his gray eyes narrowing slightly. "I know it was recently purchased by a private company." "Why?" I took a breath, choosing my words carefully. "There's more to that property than meets the eye. Beneath the building lies a vault, one that holds secrets some very powerful people would prefer to stay buried. And now I need your help to uncover them." The look on his face was a mix of shock and disbelief. "Why me?" he asked. "Because you're smart, resourceful, and because I trust you," I said simply. When we stood in that apartment days later, the air was charged with anticipation. I had brought Michael into my world, and now there was no turning back. The vault was exactly where we expected it to be, hidden beneath layers of concrete and steel. As my team worked to unlock it, I felt Michael's eyes on me. "You're not just a client," he said quietly. "You're leading something much bigger than you let on." I smiled faintly, acknowledging the truth in his words. "This is about more than just a property, Michael. It's about uncovering the truth." When the vault finally opened, I felt a rush of vindication. Inside were documents, artifacts, and evidence that could expose decades of corruption. But before we could celebrate, the sound of footsteps behind us shattered the moment. Men in dark suits filled the room, their intentions clear. I glanced at Michael, and to my relief, he didn't falter. Together, we stood our ground, determined to see it through. Hours later, as the city woke to a new day, Michael and I stood on the rooftop of the apartment building. The weight of the night's events hung between us, but so did something else, a bond forged in trust and shared purpose. So, he asked, what happens now? Now we finish what we started, I said, my voice steady. Together. He smiled, his gray eyes full of resolve. And as we stood there, watching the city stretch out before us, I knew that I had found more than an ally. I had found someone who could keep up with me, someone who could stand by my side as we faced whatever came next. The city skyline stretched endlessly before me, golden in the light of a rising sun. I leaned against the railing of the rooftop, feeling the cool metal press against my palms. My thoughts were a tangled web of triumph, regret, and something I hadn't expected to feel, hope. Michael stood beside me, his gray eyes scanning the horizon, but his focus wasn't really on the view. I could sense his unspoken questions, the lingering doubts about what he'd gotten himself into. You have questions? I said softly. Breaking the silence, Michael turned to me, his expression cautious, but warm. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. You've told me bits and pieces, but I feel like there's more to your story, Jennifer, and I want to understand. I sighed, wrapping my arms around myself as the memories resurfaced. There's always more, Michael, but I don't usually let people in far enough to see it. I hesitated, then met his gaze. But I think you've earned it. His nod was encouraging, and I drew in a deep breath. I wasn't always this woman, the one you met at the mansion, confident and enigmatic. I came from nothing, Michael. My family barely scraped by, and I learned early on that the world doesn't hand you anything. My break came when I was in my early 20s. I worked for a small art gallery, nothing fancy, but it gave me access to a world I'd only dreamed of. One night, I overheard a conversation between two powerful men about a painting that was more than it seemed. They were speaking in hushed tones about a hidden map embedded in the artwork, leading to a treasure buried beneath a historical property. Michael raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. A treasure map in a painting? That sounds like something out of a movie. I laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. It does, doesn't it? But it was real. That painting was the key to everything. I followed the trail, using what little resources I had, and uncovered secrets that would change my life forever. And the treasure? He asked, leaning closer. It wasn't gold or jewels, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. It was information, documents that exposed corruption and power plays that spanned decades. I sold some of what I found to fund my ventures, but I kept enough to protect myself. It was my ticket into this world, a world where I could finally take control. Michael was quiet for a moment, processing my words. And now he finally asked. Is this about power or something more? He asked. It's about justice, I said firmly. The apartment we found is connected to that first discovery. The people who owned it were part of the same network I exposed years ago. If we can unlock the rest of the secrets in that vault, we can bring down some of the most corrupt figures in the world. Michael's expression hardened. And the men who showed up last night, they're part of this network? Yes, I said. They've been watching me for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. They know I'm a threat. And now they know you are too. Days passed in a whirlwind of planning and preparation. The files we'd retrieved from the vault were encrypted, requiring the expertise of one of my trusted contacts. Michael stayed by my side, his determination unwavering despite the danger. You could walk away, I told him one evening as we worked in my study. This isn't your fight. He looked up from the documents spread across the desk, his gaze steady. It is now. You pulled me into this, Jennifer, and I'm not going to let you face it alone. I felt a pang of guilt, but also gratitude. Michael was unlike anyone I'd ever met, loyal, kind, and brave in a way that went beyond the surface. As we pieced together the information, a pattern emerged. The network's operations extended far beyond real estate, encompassing arms deals, money laundering, and even human trafficking. The scale of their corruption was staggering, and I realized that taking them down would require more than just exposing their secrets. "We need allies," I told Michael. "I can't do this alone." "I know someone," he said after a moment. "An old friend who works in law enforcement. He's off the grid now, but he might be willing to help." With Michael's connection and my resources, we assembled a small but formidable team. Together, we planned a coordinated effort to expose the network's activities while protecting ourselves from retaliation. The final confrontation came on a stormy night, fitting for the intensity of what lay ahead. Our team infiltrated a private gala hosted by one of the network's key figures, using the event as a cover to access their servers and extract the final pieces of evidence. Michael and I worked side by side, our bond stronger than ever. When the alarm sounded and chaos erupted, we fought our way out together, our trust in each other unshakable. In the end, our efforts paid off. The evidence we gathered led to arrests, resignations, and the dismantling of the network's operation. But the victory came at a cost. Months later, I stood in the same apartment where it all began, staring out at the city that had been my battleground. The fight was over, but the scars remained, not just on my body, but on my soul. Michael entered the room, his presence grounding me. "You did it, Jennifer," he said softly. "We did it," I corrected, turning to face him. He smiled, and for the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. "What now?" he asked. I took a deep breath, the weight of the past finally lifting. "Now we build something new. Together." And as we stood there, side by side, I knew that the future was ours to shape. As Michael and I left the apartment for the final time, I looked back one last time, reflecting on the chaos, the losses, and the justice we fought for. This wasn't just the end of a battle. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where the truth prevailed, and we learned that even in the darkest shadows, hope could take root. What do you think about this story of betrayal, redemption, and justice? Could you have trusted someone like Michael with your secrets? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Infidelity Tales for more gripping tales. See you in the next story.